And hello, everyone. All right. Thank you for adding your questions in the Ask a Question box. I actually got so many questions just right at the very beginning when you sign up. You know, it says share your struggle, and lots of people put their questions in there. So Stephanie is here. Stephanie's our community manager inside Simply Convivial Continuing Education. And so she's also going to help answer questions in the question box and maybe share links that are related as we go along. So, and also you all have insight to share with one another in the chat box too. So that chat box is a very valuable place to get help. Thank you, Stephanie. So that's the email address to send your address if you are a winner. And, you know, I picked the questions that I get the most often, and that's borne out in the questions that are popping up here in the chat box right now, because they're similar. Even if it's not phrased exactly the same, they're similar. So these questions and struggles are common across the board. You're not the only one. Okay, there we go. So Katherine asked, how do I find time that doesn't seem to exist for cleaning when cooking, homeschooling, and managing all the special needs always looms larger? There were a lot of people when you registered, you submitted, a struggle that you have. And many people just put time management. And so this one was a nice thick question, but it's still broad enough where it's not really situation specific. I mean, I think we have all felt this question come to our minds at one point or another. It's like, there is too much to do in the time that I have, and I don't seem to have the amount of time to do what I think I ought to be doing. And this thing and the other thing are always getting in the way of what I think I should be doing. So, in one way or another, and at different times, we relate to this question, right? This is not just Katherine. This is a universal question, especially when it comes to cleaning the house as a part of homemaking, as opposed to, feeding people, educating people. It's a little more urgent, a little more, think some things need to take priorities over other things. And so there's a couple different aspects of this question that I want to cover. And so the first one is when we do have correct priorities that we are living out. And that means that something that it's not like cleaning is unimportant, but we don't get to it. But if we aren't getting to the whole cleaning checklist because we're feeding people, we're educating people, we're parenting, we are taking care of medical issues, we're managing financial paperwork so that to manage our resources, we are providing therapies or different help for our children. And then it's like, I didn't get to the cleaning that I wanted to do. I was like, well, yep, you sure didn't. No one said that there was enough time to do every single thing on our list. So then you have to look at that list and determine, are you following your priorities? Because feeding people and educating people is more important than mopping the floor. So you shouldn't neglect dinner or homeschooling in order to mop the floor. That would be an improper balance. So if you're neglecting to mop the floor because you're doing the important things, the things that your children need more than they need a shiny floor or a shiny sink or, dusted bookshelves, then that's the way it is. There's definitely seasons that are like that. And so one thing we have to remember, especially as mothers at home, is that the way things are working right now in one season is not how it's going to always be. So it's not like, oh, I have to figure out how to manage all these things I have in front of me, because if I don't figure this out, this is the way my life is always going to be. I'm always going to be doing this work here and never ever getting to this thing over here. And say, well, you know what? There's summer break, Christmas break, spring break, where there's not the homeschooling piece. So you just say, well, you know, we're going to have to do some extra cleaning to kind of dig out of this hole during the school break, because we don't right now have enough time with the homeschooling. That's fair. That's managing your time. There isn't this secret out there that will make it so that if you manage things or set things up correctly, every single thing will fit so that we get everything done while feeling perfectly calm and peaceful about it. And so if we have that kind of ideal set up in our mind, like I have to figure things out so that I have a clean house all the time, everyone has homemade meals, the laundry is never on a backlog, we're doing an amazing homeschool curriculum, and I'm giving all my kids the attention that they need, while never feeling stressed out or irritated, but just like chill. That just might be an unrealistic expectation. And that kind of expectation can sometimes fuel our internet searches, our Amazon purchases, because we're looking for that solution that's going to just make all the pieces fall in place automatically, where we no longer really have to worry about it. We don't really have to put forth effort anymore. And that's not the way it actually works. Yes, Leah says, I think for me it has a lot to do with letting go of unrealistic expectations of what I thought a good mom looked like, which usually in my mind looked like a spotless home and everything organized, right? Again, and the same thing, you know, what does a clean house, what does that mean for you? What kind of standard are you imagining? And is that doable in your current? Carol just went straight for the jugular, which I completely agree with. And I'm going to be talking more about this in a couple months. But Carol says, I have also shut off all my social media apps and I felt like a burden was lifted. Yeah, actually, I am going to get there a little bit with another question I'm going to tackle. So I will leave that mic drop moment there for Carol. Yes, Leah says it also helps to ask your husband what his expectations are for the house. My husband thinks the house is clean when I think it's awful. I was going to bring that up with another question in the future too, but bringing in someone else's opinion and assessment of the situation when you're feeling like I can't handle all the things is very helpful, because we tend to spin ourselves up and make things a bigger deal than they really are, and imagine and feel ourselves in a deeper hole than we actually are. And we compare all the things we have going on, and we compare our feelings about our current home and the state of things against the picture perfect ideal, the pictures that we see on Instagram, the pictures that we see in magazines or on HGTV. And there's such a difference between our real life and then what we think it's supposed to be like if we were doing everything we were supposed to do. But that's a false picture. I mean, the HGTV, the magazines, even the Instagram, beautiful home photos, or even, you know, beautiful parenting or something where the children are just calmly, placidly painting or something, and definitely not spilling any paint. It's just not an understanding of what real life is like, or real children are like, or real mothering is like. So there is no guarantee or promise that you will get to your whole cleaning list every day, or even maybe even hardly any of it all week, when you are honoring your priorities in growing up the people that God has given you into your care. And so this reminds me of a C.S. Lewis quote, which I can't quote verbatim, but he says, we're tempted to think of the interruptions, especially of people, especially of our children, as interruptions to our real life. But those people and the needs that they are coming to us with, even though they interfere with our plans, that's not an interruption of our real life. That is our real life. It doesn't put our other things on hold. It is the point. So it's actually a good thing if you are cooking, homeschooling, managing special needs, and the cleaning gets the dregs and the leftovers and doesn't really get all the way done. Your priorities are top and you're doing those. So don't worry when you don't get to everything. Find some other ways or means. Ask your husband how he thinks it's going, or ask him about different strategies you might do or ideas. Yes, we're going to talk about chores here in a minute too. Yeah. So I would think about, what are your expectations for cleaning and what is the actual objective state of things, and what are you comparing it to? And a mom with a whole lot of little kids is not going to be able to keep as clean of a house as a mom with bigger kids, or a mom whose kids are away at school for several hours. Not just because she has a different kind of time available, but also because the workload itself is also different. The younger the kids, the more work there is. And that's just a reality. And it doesn't stay that way forever. Little kids do get bigger. And so just watch those expectations, or even if some kids have special needs, or if you as a mom have health issues, the expectation that you should still keep everything at the same higher level as someone who enjoys spending hours cleaning, or is a little Energizer bunny. It's not the same. So you can't measure your situation against someone else's situation and have that promote realistic expectations. So be careful of what you're using as a standard and your goal. All right. We could talk for hours about that question and the surrounding issues, but we're going to move on to the next question, which is actually super similar. So Lydia, she said this was her struggle, and it's not really phrased as a question, but it can easily be a question. Lydia says that she's feeling discouraged when she cleans, and then later it's dirty again, like 5 minutes later, all the time. So I have two answers for this. And the first one is, watch the story that you are telling yourself, the spin that you are putting on the situation, because we all do put spin on the situation. We're all interpreting our life. And whatever we're looking for, whatever story we're telling ourselves, is what we're going to see confirmed in this. We are overlaying our interpretation on our world. And so if we set up our expectations again, where when I clean something, it should stay clean, that's an assumption that's very flawed. It's like, well, yeah, that would be true if you were a very neat person and lived alone. And then also, when we I remember one story that I kept kind of interposing on my life was the whack-a-mole. I don't know if Chuck E. Cheese's are national or what, but like the arcade type restaurant pizza joint where the little plastic ground squirrel mole, pops up and you have to whack it. And you get points, I think, for as many as you hit. But just right when you get one, it goes down and another pops up in your peripheral vision. And so you can never keep them down. And that's what chores felt like because, life is continuing to be lived in our house. And that produces evidence. Life produces evidence. So we actually don't want sterile houses that are barren and lifeless. The work would stay done if that were the case, but that's not the point of the home. That's when the work wouldn't be worth it. But when we clean the house, the goal of the cleaning isn't so that it stays done. There ought not be discouragement over dishes after a meal, laundry at the end of the day, because we're wearing clothes and we're eating food. So this is just a part of reality that we are fighting if we think it would be better to not have any dishes to do or any laundry to do. There are situations where there's not laundry to do or dishes to do, and it's where there are not people. So a people-centered, a people-focused home is going to have a continual run of dishes, of laundry, of crumbs on the floor, of bathrooms needing to be wiped down because they're being used all the time. And the more people there are, and the more you're at home, the more they're all used. And so the more mess is generated. And that's reality that we can't and really don't want to change, because the only way to change that is to clamp down on people and prevent them from growing and living in healthy ways. So what our job is with that cleaning is just maintenance, is just keeping things functional and flowing, making it so that people don't get diseases in our bathrooms, making it so there are clothes to wear and dishes to eat off of. And we are providing the stage for life to be lived on. And we're managing that stage and keep preventing the props from getting in the way of the action. But the action is the point. The stage isn't worth anything all on its own. So our homes, our tools, they aren't ends. If the home and its cleanliness and decor and everything was an end in itself, then it would be better to not have any other people in our home. Because that would help, that would promote an ideal aesthetic. That would keep our homes picture perfect. It would also make our homes pointless, dead, lifeless. We want homes that are full of life, and that means that they will be continually messy. So we can rejoice in our home's life-giving elements, and just know that we're keeping things going. We're keeping life going. That's what we're doing. We aren't on this hamster wheel trying to get to an aesthetic home that is always looking put together. That's a rat race. That's a hamster wheel that actually gets you nowhere because it's not an end in itself. It's not good for itself. Even though that is the end kind of trumpeted by home magazines and home decor sellers, where it's if it's just a beautiful place to live in, then everything will be wonderful. But that's actually a lie. Your home can look beautiful and be empty. And being empty would make it stay beautiful. But what good is that really? So they're in this sense, and I have been there, and I still am tempted to jump down that hole all the time. But it is a hole that we can be lifted up out of by aligning our story, our internal interpretation of what's actually going on with our homes and with our work. All right, let's move on to the next question there. All these are very similar. Elizabeth asks, let's make it, there we go. How do you keep up with homemaking during early pregnancy? This is, again, a similar question, because actually my personal answer is that if you mean doing all the things that I usually do when I'm not in early pregnancy, the answer is I don't. Again, you have to watch your expectations and recognize the work that you are doing when you are growing a person, and when you need to go to bed earlier and sleep in and take naps, because your body is actually working really hard even though you can't see anything being done. It's a hugely important thing to be growing a human person inside of you. But we tend to move on with life as if, and not count that, and then think that we should be doing all the things that we were doing before. And we can't. But you also aren't going to be in the first trimester for forever, actually. And then there's going to be third trimester, and then there's going to be postpartum. And these are all different ups and downs that we need to just take into account and not expect that we're going to do the same amount of activities and the same amount of work as we do when, definitely like where my youngest is 10. So it's actually been a really long time since I've been in early pregnancy. But when I was pregnant with number 4, and so I had 2 school-age kids and a toddler, and then was pregnant, I was on the couch a lot of the day, just kind of, I was doing the parenting, but there were a lot of audiobooks and puzzles, and there was no fancy curriculum, there were no activities. It was like, okay, so we're getting some books via audio. We're doing, read aloud, but someone else is doing the reading. And, they're learning with geography puzzles and different things, but, this is where we're at right now. 0 regrets. Those young elementary boys are now graduated, and in no way did that set them back at all. Long afternoons with lots of audiobooks, I think, was actually a positive good and better for them than involved activity-based or workbook-based curriculums. So that's on the homeschool end of things. But then the homemaking end of things, it's like, yeah, you could try getting a mother's helper to do some of the basic things to help you, but you have to figure out different expectations or different ways to get things done, because you don't have the same amount of energy. And it's the same if you have a chronic illness. You have to take that into account and not say, okay, with my chronic illness or with early pregnancy, how am I still going to get the same amount done as someone whose kids are at school and has, great vitality, lots of energy and good health? You're not. But you're not being compared to her either. You are being asked to steward your situation, not someone else's. So it's going to keep your eyes on your own paper and count all the things you are doing, which includes growing a baby. All right. Then we get kids and we want them to help out, right? So we've got a chore question. Missy asks, how do I delegate chores to children without overwhelming them? Yeah, keep your eyes on your own paper. I'm pretty sure I got that either from Rachel Jankovic or Nancy Wilson. But it's a great phrase. I didn't make it up. Probably because I was homeschooled. I didn't have other people's papers to look at. Just the answer key. Keep your eyes out of the answer. Okay. How to delegate chores to children without overwhelming them. Now, I don't know the age of Missy's children. And I know in the chat here or people watching the replay, we've got a variety of ages. You might have all younger kids. You might have a mix. You might have, double-digit kids. So I think that a similar approach works with chores as with homeschooling, because it's something that you're teaching children to do for themselves, right? When we are teaching children need to be taught how to learn. They need to be given the skills and abilities so that when they're adults, they can learn on their own. And the goal is that they are learners on their own. But that happens, at the earliest, it happens at the tail end of high school. And unfortunately, it's about the same with chores. They need skills, and they need to practice those skills, and they need supervision and accountability and motivation and moving up in what's being asked of them. And right about the time where they become capable, they are not in your house anymore. Or they get a job because now they're capable and someone's willing to pay them. And so you don't really get the benefit. So that's the big picture. But that's not to say that teaching children chores is all extra work. It is helpful. Kids can help. The kids can be very, very helpful, but only if your expectations are in line with reality and in line with the kind of help that children are capable of. Kind of like, say a 10-year-old who can read is doing some self-education because they're reading books on their own. But you as the parent are still kind of watching and helping them navigate and making sure they have the time to do that and making sure they have the books to do that. It's not hands off yet, even though they are learning on their own in a way. It's not hands off for mom, and it's the same with chores. You can give them the practice and delegate, but it's not going to be hands off. There are a few different ways. I know from experience, chores can become overwhelming to kids. And that's if you give them a job without teaching them how to do it first. You just kind of throw them in the deep end and expect them to swim. They're actually going to drown. So you have to start with easy things and train them up. No matter how old they are, you can't just tell them to do a job where they've not seen you do it, not helped you do it, not tried it out themselves first, and then you hold them responsible for getting it done well. All right, those are different levels. And you have to start at the beginning level if you want them to get to the end. You can't just throw them in at the end. The other way it's overwhelming is when mom is overwhelmed and asking them to do work to get her out of overwhelm. Am I right? Our overwhelm is contagious. And so if we feel like chore time is short on time, if we feel like we shouldn't be putting forth any effort once we've delegated something, it should no longer be anything on our radar. And then we realize that our attention and parenting is required. And so we kind of fly off the deep end a little bit. Or when we aren't prepared to parent while teaching chores, right? We are continual counselors as parents, and we have to help our kids work through the normal feelings and experiences of life. So they are going to try to not do a good job. They are going to try to get out of their work. They are going to think they did good enough when they didn't. They are going to argue about the definition of a good job. These are all, we do that, right? They are people, and we're helping them become better people. And that takes time and energy. So if you still have little kids, Start when they're little with easy jobs and take advantage of the fact that little kids love to be helpers. So, give them little jobs like emptying the trash, like the bathroom trash and putting it in the kitchen trash can, emptying the silverware, loading silverware into the dishwasher, pushing a little cordless vacuum around. They can't sweep. Teenagers have a hard time sweeping. I don't know. There's some I'm not sure that, we won't get on a tangent, but I don't know what it takes to teach someone how to sweep. It apparently is just knowledge that comes after you're 20, maybe. I don't know. My solution, instead of teaching them to sweep, is to get a cordless vacuum. Because then they at least pick up some crumbs instead of pushing them around. It's a little bit better. And then set your expectations. It's not going to be done as well as you would do it. Big surprise, right? But that's not a proper expectation. We are getting help, but we are also giving them practice and experience. So there's give and take there in that situation. And we have to be prepared for that. We have to be prepared to hold them accountable. We have to be watchful for how long it actually takes and then not burden them with too much work and too little time. And we need to be thanking them for the help that they do provide and be on the same team together. So I have a few posts about chores on the blog that you can look at that have like more specifics or details. But at least when I use the word delegate, my default expectation when I'm delegating something is that I'm taking it off my plate so I don't have to worry about it anymore. And we can't do that with chores and children for the most part. Right about the time where you could expect to do that, they have jobs and you no longer have their time. So, or they're going to leave the house. So assign chores to children and have them work alongside you and ask for their help, but it's still your work that they're helping you with. And that's a good perspective to keep. You are helping them build skills that they will need. So giving them chores is providing something for them. And when you come at it with that mindset, I think you'll have a good balance of expectation and accountability versus thinking that you are removing something from your plate. Okay, this question there we go again. Didn't do this right. There were several questions that talked about not having time to rest or, feeling like they were working all day long. But I thought this was just a succinct way to say it. Ricki asks, how do I build a pause into my day? And it's so helpful to think about it in that way. Because if you're talking about in the middle of the day, a break, a respite is helpful, but it is just a pause and not a stop. And sometimes we feel that we can't pause, but we have this super long to-do list or just a sense of obligation of all the things. And so we go from one thing to the other, but we're actually not using our time well in any of it. So we don't have time during the day because we've let jobs expand to fill all the time. Not because they actually need to take that long, but just because we're puttering, the job is vague in our mind. We don't really know what we should do next, so I'm just going to do this thing over here. And that's actually, it's not very productive. It's not really working productively, and it also doesn't feel great. So then you end the day thinking, I felt busy, but I didn't really get anything done. And sometimes that's just not true. That's just a lie that we are tempted to tell ourselves and then do tell ourselves when, we spent the day parenting, we spent the day fulfilling our priorities and our responsibilities, and it might not have been the things on our checklist. And so we say, I didn't get anything done today. And then that's just not true. And then on the other hand, we were just kind of floating around doing things directionless and without intention. And so we felt busy. We weren't, like having fun or anything. But we really didn't get that much done. We really didn't use our time well. Both of those are possibilities. And sometimes, just like, when my sons end up getting in a anxious state over their math, I tell them to go outside and run. That's a pause. That's okay, stop this, change your activity, change your setting, and then come back to do the work. And that's helpful. That's a reset that we as moms sometimes need also. And what we need to recognize first is that getting on our phones and doing social media is not a pause, and it's not a break. It does not provide a respite for your mind or your body. And so even though we choose it to take a break, like we say, oh, I need a break, I'm just going to, scroll because it's fast and easy, and we get kind of an endorphin kick off of it because that's what it's designed to do. It's not a satisfying endorphin kick, and it's not a helpful one. It's one that sucks you in. It's not one that returns you to your real life refreshed and ready to tackle it. So if you feel like you don't have time for a break or a pause in your middle of the day, or you need some kind of break, but you just feel like you don't have the time, I would challenge you to look at your screen time assessment on your phone. It will tell you the times of day that you're on your phone and the amount of time that you're on your phone on average every day. Or you can even look at how much time do you spend every day on the social media apps. And if you feel like you need a break and you're not getting it and you don't have time for anything, the time that it says on social media is time that you have. You're just using it in a way that's sucking you dry rather than giving you more life. It would be better to take a power nap. It would be better to do 10 jumping jacks. It would be better to get outside and putter in the garden, to drink a big glass of cold water, to call a friend or your mom on the phone and talk while folding the laundry. These are ways that we can build our reservoir back up and give our brain and our body a little break that's actually helping us move forward with our life rather than draining us from life, which is what social media or YouTube or any of these apps will do, because they are designed to keep you in the app. So you get a positive endorphin kick because they are geared to draw that out, but it takes incredible willpower to pull yourself out of the app, because it's like this magnet attraction in the very way it's set up, and they get better and better and better. Their goal is to keep you in the app as long as possible. So you are using your willpower and it is using you up. It's not providing you a break. And distractions, especially of that kind, are not breaks. They don't return you excited and grateful and focused to your real life. So be careful how you are approaching the idea of pausing or resting or taking a break. And I'm going to be talking more about this in the coming months, but being on your phone is not a break. It doesn't count as a break. Just physically, mentally, it's not helpful. So be careful that you don't think that you're taking a break when you're doing it. All right. I wondered how many of these I'd be able to get to. Let's see. Actually, that's kind of similar to what we've already talked about. And so is that one. Let's see. I think we will end with this question from Pamela, actually. I'm going to be talking more about breaking a phone habit and getting off social media in March and April. And we're going to do a challenge. And it's going to be free and public, and it's going to be a lot of fun. But I'm still ironing that out. But it is going to be a thing that we're going to do. So stay tuned, stay connected. So Pamela asks, why do I unconsciously, and it's a little bit of a question, like, is this really unconscious? Or why do I unconsciously resist the routines that would make life easier? And of course, there can be many reasons for that. And I do have a recent blog post that is on that topic. Like, why are routines so hard? They look like they're simple, and I know they would help. So why am I not doing it? I was like, well, they're actually more complicated than we think. And so that's one reason why, because we're expecting it to be easy, but in reality, it isn't. And so when there's that big of a difference between our expectations and what we're actually experiencing, we kind of push back or just feel stuck or without traction. Here's the blog post. I'll put it in the chat. So one reason is that those routines are harder than we give them credit for. And so we kind of pull back and think that we have to keep figuring it out until it's easy because it's supposed to be easy. And so we never actually get started because we're actually always pulling back and making up new ones because it seems like it's the routine that's not working, because a routine that works is easy. And a routine that works. I mean, it's actually, when we work, the routine works. And it takes a lot of practice to get a routine that works and to kind of adjust as you go. Looking for a routine that's like clockwork, regular, same time, same stuff happens, doesn't really take a lot of effort. It just kind of goes like a machine. Or the routine, we figured out the routine that makes us work like a machine. And the reality is that life doesn't work like machines. That's the wrong imagery. That's the wrong analogy for life. And so again, it's a way to have false expectations about what's really going on. And then there's this mismatch between what we're expecting and what we're getting, and we don't know what to do with that, so we're stymied. And the real problem is just not understanding the way the world actually works, not understanding our actual calling, not understanding how a routine helps and how a routine is built. So a routine is built baby step by baby step over a long time. It takes a long time practicing a routine for it to actually have a significant effect in our home management and in ourselves. But so we expect it to have payoff too soon. And then we redo it because we weren't getting payoff, but we actually weren't putting in the time required to get that payoff. It'd be kind of like planting a tomato seed. It's kind of hard to get. It's hard and it takes a long time to get tomatoes from a tomato seed. But we say, oh, here's a tomato. I'm going to plant these seeds and then I'll have more tomatoes tomorrow or even next week or even next month. And it's like, no, going to take a long time. And it's going to take a lot of watering and tending and managing before you get a crop of tomatoes. So we end up just working against ourselves and working against reality when we have a misunderstanding of what we're doing. The other thing is that sometimes our routines or the work that we want to do is so vague, or it's, we say, I'm going to do the laundry, as if in one day you're going to make it so that there's no dirty laundry in the whole house. Did you do the math on that? Do you know how long it takes to wash a load and dry a load and fold a load? And do you know how many loads there are to do in your house? Is it actually feasible? Or is this just a goal that I'm going to burn myself out doing because if I just push hard enough, I should be able to do it? And then I'm going to feel terrible because I didn't do hardly any. When it was just like, well, that wasn't ever going to work. No matter what you tell yourself, that wasn't going to work. And then no matter what, there's going to be more laundry tomorrow because that's actually just the nature of laundry in life. So, what did you build this up as in your imagination? And was that in keeping with reality? So a great way to make progress in your house to apply yourself to small but significant housework when you've got a lot of other things going is to just take 10 minutes. Instead of saying, I'm going to clean the whole kitchen, I'm going to clean out the fridge, I'm going to catch up on laundry. We set these like big goals for ourselves where there's actually no way we can meet that goal. And then we discount what we can actually do in 10 minutes. And it's like, okay, I can tell my kids, hey, make your bed and fluff up your stuffed animals or something. Or, hey, sit in your room and listen to an audiobook for 15 minutes and then spend 10 minutes in the area that's driving you crazy with a timer. The timer is important. And you'll actually get some traction. You'll actually make a difference if you give yourself the big, like, I'm going to mop the whole floor. We're going to make freezer meals for a month. It's like, well, what about dinner today? Have you thought about dinner today? Or are you making grand plans for freezer meals for the whole month? It's the same thing with the cleaning the house. Like, I'm going to do everything so that it stays put where I want. And it's like, well, how about just spending 10 minutes on that one area that's driving you crazy? You'll actually get somewhere doing that. So inside Simply Convivial Continuing Education, we're going to practice this in February with the Declutter Challenge, where for the month of February, which has 28 days, the challenge is to have 20 days where you spend 10 minutes taking care of a very small defined area. And this is going to be the third or the fourth, I think the fourth year that we've done the Declutter Challenge. And what everyone learns through experience in this month is that 10 minutes makes a difference. And that you actually work better when you have a win that you recognize than if you have a huge carrot dangling ahead of you that you never get to. The perfectly clean and organized house. That doesn't actually work. It's not a destination you can achieve. And so that's why you feel discouraged, because you keep pushing yourself towards this impossible goal. That's not actually motivating. What's motivating is noticing that you can get something done, that 10 minutes makes a difference. And what a lot of women do during this Declutter Challenge is after the first 10 minutes one day, they start noticing other 10-minute pockets. And maybe that 10 minutes that they would have spent on the phone, they actually put a timer on or put a song on and just declutter or clean one small area for that time. And they feel refreshed and energized and motivated and successful. And that moves you forward. And it makes such a big difference. It's way better for our mindset and motivation than working towards a huge, unreasonable, unachievable goal. Even if it's the goal that we can picture in our mind as beautiful, part of the reason why you unconsciously resist it is that your mind actually recognizes that that's not your life. It's not feasible. And so why put forth effort towards something that's not feasible? That's a big part of the unconscious resistance. And so you get the exact opposite with a 10-minute timed cleaning, because you have no excuses for not spending 10 minutes. You can find 10 minutes. You can arrange for 10 minutes and you can get a lot done. And if you're paying attention to it, you can see that you got a lot done in the 10 minutes. And then that builds up. So Rebecca's asking, how do you sign up for the Declutter Challenge? Oh yes, if you're enrolled, then you're in the Declutter Challenge. So everyone inside Simply Convivial Continuing Education has the opportunity to do the Declutter Challenge with us in February. It's included, it's not extra. It's For members, it is our monthly topic for February. So that means all the weekly seminars will be about decluttering and cleaning in 10-minute chunks. There will be a checklist in our Member Monday emails and on the little button on your dashboard starting February 1st for the checklist. And the chat in Convivial Circle, the monthly topic chat, will be all about decluttering, about 10 minutes, about building that traction and motivation in your life by recognizing the small wins, that the small wins really are significant. So the focus, in Simply Convivial, our focus is always on more than just the work and the status. Our focus is about our hearts and our attitudes and managing that, because our actions flow out of our hearts and our minds. And so we have to start with our attitude. That's why I say organize your attitude. So if you want to find out more about the Declutter Challenge, click the green button below and it will tell you all about Simply Convivial Continuing Education, which is our membership for, it's like homemaker training, a homemaker community where we organize our attitudes so we can organize our lives. We're not looking for the perfect system that's going to make it effortless. We're looking to invest ourselves in our homes and families in wise ways and cheerfully. So it's about so much more than having a clean house. It's a whole life approach. And it starts with our attitude, with our mindset, with our heart. Thank you for coming and asking your questions. And I look forward to doing this again and to using some of these questions in blog posts and videos on my YouTube channel. I will be using these questions for videos. I want to be putting more YouTube videos out there. And so just conversations about these topics that matter to us as homemakers, because our work is important and it's so easy to get discouraged in it. So I want to be helping you stay encouraged in the good work that you are doing, because we as moms and homemakers, wives, are the backbone of society. We are building up people, and that's what our home is for. And so the work there matters, not because we're making a showpiece or creating the perfect aesthetic, but because our homes are the places where people are built up. So we need to stay strong for that work. Thank you, everyone.